What is going on, everyone? Welcome to Therapy on Two Wheels. Today we are going to be discussing a long-term review of the 2023 KLR 650. This is the adventure model, so it does come with the pannier bags on the back. We got the auxiliary lights in the front. You also got one of these USB sockets on the left-hand side. You got your 12 volt over on the right-hand side there too. So it does come with some additional features on top of the base model KLR, which is also a great bike to have if you're not doing particularly long trips or you just want something a little bit more basic. You don't need all the accessories. The regular models are great too. It's basically the same thing, just without the accessories. No differences in the engine or suspension or anything like that. So the first topic that I want to review is the power. Now, right now I'm cruising at about 50 miles per hour. Just some back roads here in Southern California. This is in 4th gear. You can hear that the revs are a little bit higher, but nothing too crazy. You know, I could probably put it into 5th gear here, which is the top gear. This is only a 5-speed. And it just chugs along. That's one of the great things about this motor, is you can go down to very low RPMs and it's really hard to stall out this vehicle. I mean, I can go down to about 25, 30 in 5th gear and no problems with any type of stalling. A lot of times if I'm in these types of roads, I'll bump it back down into 4th gear, just because it's a little bit more lively, a little more power. If I want to pass somebody that's going a little slow, I'm always going to have that in 4th gear. 5th gear just does not have that punch, kind of that amount of torque that you're getting in the lower part of the gearbox. So in 1st and 2nd gear, that's most of the time what I'm going to be using when I am off-roading. 1st gear, you'll be up to about 20, you know, maybe 25. It's revving pretty high at that point. So if I'm going between, you know, less than 15 miles per hour, I'll usually have it 1st gear. If I'm going between 15 and 30 is usually going to be in 2nd. And if I'm on more of a fire road, you know, hard packed dirt, nothing around I'm going to be running into, I'll put it into 3rd gear and go 35, 40. Most of the time you're not going to be going too much faster than that off-road unless you're on a dirt bike or just wide open road. So for me, plenty fast off-roading. I'm not a big off-roader, you know, just did this on my own and kind of learned how to ride off-road on my own. Didn't really do any instruction or anything like that, so I would not say I'm an expert by any means in off-road riding. On the road it does feel pretty planted. So you can see we have some twisty roads here. It's fairly light for an adventure bike. I think the adventure model runs about 480 pounds wet weight. So it does not feel that heavy. It is a taller motorcycle. So if you're not used to being on taller motorcycles, or if you're a shorter individual, that might make it a little harder to ride. But with this type of bike, it does have a lot of top heavy weight to it, because it does have a little bit more lift off the ground compared to something like a sport bike or a cruiser. So when you're trying to maneuver this around, it does feel a little bit heavier than it actually is. But when you're on top of the bike, you know, there's easy maneuverability. You're not going to be scraping pegs generally when you're going around a corner on this type of bike, but you can still have quite a bit of fun in the twisties. Just keep it in 3rd or 4th gear. You know, if you're going under 60 miles per hour or so, usually if you're going about 60, 65, you do have to bump it up into 5th gear. You know, cruising at 4th gear on this bike going 65 miles per hour, you're wringing the neck out of it, and you're going to hear it on the RPMs. It sounds like it's really struggling to push you any farther. So that's usually where I'm at in 5th gear, is about 60, 65 miles per hour. But on these types of turns, no problems. Now for the engine itself, it's been rock solid for me. I did have one issue after putting this on a trailer and hauling it from Vegas to New Mexico. The round trip was about 1,500 miles, and I don't know if I shook something loose. You wouldn't think so, because this is meant to go off-road, so you're taking on bumpy roads all the time. But something happened and the fuel injection wasn't working correctly, or the fuel pump wasn't working properly. So they replaced that. Luckily it was still under warranty. It was within the first year that I bought it. And I've had this bike for about a year and a half now. I've put nearly 2,600 miles on it. And during those 2,600 miles, it's probably been about half off-road and half on-road. The roads, I moved from Las Vegas to Southern California about 6 months ago or so. So for the majority of this, for the first year, I did have it in Las Vegas. And during that time frame, I did a lot more off-road riding. There's just a lot of areas that were very open in Las Vegas compared to out here in Southern California. It's a lot of private, okay, I don't know which one is that. It's a lot of privately owned land. And so there's not as much you can do. Like, all this is just development for new housing. So there's nowhere that I can ride out here. They're just building homes like crazy at this point. Taking up all the outdoors land. There are some OHV parks and things like that out here. But anyways, I used to do a lot more off-road riding, but it would take a while to get out to those off-road areas. So I'd usually be driving 15, 20 miles out to them. And yeah, because of that, I did put on Shinko 705 tires. I knew I was going to be doing a little bit more on-road compared to just fully using this off-road or for adventure style riding. And the 705s have been great on-road. It feels much more planted. Definitely have better traction in twisty roads, and if I'm going up a mountain or down a mountain, feels a lot more comfortable. Off-road, not as great as the knobby tires that came on this as stock, but for the type of riding that I was doing off-road, again, not going off any big jumps, I'm not going through deep sand or anything like that, mostly hard packed dirt roads or some gravel roads. These tires did just fine for me for the speeds that I was going and the type of riding that I was doing off-road. They only cost me, I think, with the installation, it was somewhere around the 300 mark for both tires, the front and rear. So fairly cheap tires. For this engine, it does like to rev out to about 50 in second gear. I'll probably go to about 65 in third. And I'll go about 75, 80 in fourth. But again, at that 75, 80 mark in fourth, it is screaming at that point. And there's a lot of vibration in these handlebars. So that's one of the downsides to having this bike on the highway. If you're cruising at 75, 80 miles per hour, even in fifth gear, it is going to be quite vibey. I also did take off the original pegs that came on this bike because I was going to do more off-road riding, or I thought I was. And so I took those off because when you go off-road, they're very squishy. If your boots get wet or those pegs get wet, your feet slip right off of them when you're trying to stand up. And I really didn't like that, so I put some more dirt bike style pegs on this bike to make it a little bit more comfortable, a little safer off-road as well. Brakes on this bike, so it's only one disc up front. I think it's somewhere around 300 millimeters, single disc. I think it's two piston caliper, but it's plenty of stopping power. Again, this bike is not meant to go, and it can't really go over 100 miles per hour, so you don't need intense stopping power. Same thing if you're off-road, it's more intrusive than anything. It does have ABS as standard. No, you cannot turn off the ABS, so if you are a hardcore off-road rider, you like slipping that back tire, going around those curves, this is going to be a little bit more difficult, especially when you are trying to brake. It does not feel the best when you're going fast trying to come to a stop off-road. It's very jittery, but again, this bike is meant to be kind of a 50-50 on-road, off-road compared to something like a true dual sport or a dirt bike. So with that, brakes are plenty fine. Back brake works well when you're in slow traffic or if you're in a parking lot. Just holding on that back brake with your right foot makes it super easy to maneuver around. And this bike is super nimble for the size and the weight. It's very easy to go parking lot maneuvers, doing U-turns. Has a very tight turn radius, so I can turn these handlebars quite a bit on both sides, which is great for off-roading as well, for kind of some of those technical trails. When you are in first gear, it does seem like it's going to cut out pretty quickly, getting up to that 25, 30 miles per hour. So you are shifting pretty quickly when you're on road here. It's also a little twitchy. It only has about 40 foot-pounds of torque, but when you're off-road, it is a little bit twitchy in that first gear. So like I was mentioning earlier, unless you're going 10, maybe 15 miles per hour, I'm usually in second. Second will go down to, you know, close to 10 to 12 miles per hour without stalling out. So I usually keep it in second gear for most of my off-road riding in the style that I do. This seat is really comfortable too. So in terms of the size of it, I'm about 6'2". I can get my feet just about fully planted on the ground with the stock seat. There is an S version of this bike too, which is a short version, and I believe the seat is only about 31 inches in height compared to, I think this one's about 34. So for me it works great. I'm very comfortable on this. My knees don't feel too cramped up. I feel like I have plenty of room, especially on longer trips. I've taken this on 3-4 hour trips and no problems there. My butt's not hurting at the end of it. The seat is very comfortable, very plush. Same thing for a passenger. They're gonna have a very plush seat as well. And plenty of room. You know, if you have two bigger people on this bike, no problems with carrying that particular weight. The suspension works great for me. Again, I'm not taking off huge jumps. I'm not trying to do anything crazy. I'm a fairly moderate rider in terms of intensity. So for me, the suspension is just fine. I don't even think I've adjusted it from when I bought it originally, just because it works perfectly for me in the setting that it's at currently. So I have not done any adjustment to that. This windscreen does work pretty well. However, for me at my height, I was getting a lot of wind buffeting at the top of my helmet, probably like the top third half of it. So I did get these 2-inch extenders to put it up a little bit, and that works perfect. I don't feel any air on me at this point. So it's very comfortable riding at that 75, 80 miles per hour on the freeway for extended periods of time. You don't feel like you're getting blown all over. The bike is heavy enough to where on road, especially with a little bit of wind, you feel stable. Once you get past about that 80, 85 miles per hour, that's when it feels a little bit more shaky. It does not like kind of 85, 90 mile per hour speeds. And typically you're not going to be going that fast on this type of bike. That's not really what it's meant for. But in these types of, you know, slow speed maneuvers in town, it works perfectly fine for that. Mirrors are okay. You know, they could be a little bit better. They do get really shaky at higher speeds, which can be an issue, especially on the freeway. Everything just looks kind of blurred out when you get above about 50, 55 miles per hour. So you could do a little swap out for aftermarket mirrors on here if you really wanted to. But for me, again, I'm not doing that much freeway riding, so it's not as big of a deal for me. Last couple things I'll talk about on this bike, it does have the kind of wind protectors or hand guards here, which is great for those high speeds, especially when it's cold weather. It does keep your hands pretty cool, which I love. Very easy to find neutral on this bike. One click up, I usually have no problems with that. There's a lot of attachment points, so for me, I do shoot these videos. A lot of parts here, up on this top. We have the engine guards on the side. You know, you even got the bar ends here that you can put camera attachment onto. But it is very comfortable and easy to put these cameras on here. So I'll go ahead and shut the bike off. Kickstand down. So yeah, that is the 2023 KLR 650. Comment down below if you have any questions about the bike, other videos you want me to do on this. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one.